Da 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 da. Da 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 da. There used to be a Granian tower alone on the sea. You became the light on the dark side of me. Love remains a drug that's high, not the pill. Did you know when it snowed, my eyes become large and the light that you shine can't be seen? Baby, I can pay you to a kiss from a rose on a grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. Now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. Da 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 da. There is so much a man can tell you, so much he can say. You remain my power, my pleasure, my pain. Baby, to me you're like a grown addiction that I can't deny. Won't you tell me, is that healthy, baby? Did you know when it snowed, my eyes become large and the light that you shine can't be seen? Baby, I can pay you to a kiss from a rose on a grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. Now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Been kissed by a rose on a grave. I've been kissed by a rose on the grave. And if I should fall, will it all go away? I've been kissed by a rose. Baby, I can pay you to a kiss from a rose on a grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. Now that your rose, a light hits the gloom on the grave. Yes, I can pay you to a kiss from a rose on a grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. Now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. Hey Mason, good to see you, brother.
Yeah, man. Let me resituate.
So are we recording now?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, right, I was the one that seeked Mason out because I was such a fan and I wanted to be on his show. And he's just like, oh, Seal, That guy? No. No, but okay, that's kind of that. He didn't say that. Obviously, that wasn't his. Well, not obviously, but that wasn't his response. But the true bit is that I did actually seek you out, didn't I? Because we have a mutual friend, Brian, who was being really selfish and keeping Mason all to himself. When I already told Brian that I was a fan of Mason's because I've been watching his podcast for forever, right? I'm a fan of the pedals. I'm a fan of his podcast, and that you were doing that Thursday podcast with Brian, and he was there. So Brian had actually traveled up from Texas or wherever it is he lives, and he was in the Bay Area with Mason, and I was on FaceTime with Brian, and I said, "Put Mason on the phone." And he was kind of like, I could see that he just like, he didn't really want to share Mason. But I was like, put him on. Yeah, I was like pretty kind of, determined. I said, put him on the phone. And so he put he put Brian on, Mason on FaceTime, and we've been quick buddies ever since.
Wow.
So I actually wanted to be on his show. It's not like he asked, he came looking for me. He couldn't care less.
Well, I think as you'll find as we get deeper into the interview that couldn't be further from the truth. And I have to say it's been a real honor getting to know you and to get to be able to play Kiss from a Rose with you. And I'm just absolutely dumbfounded that you'd even agree to be in a room with me and be interviewed.
Oh, come on, dude. It's great. I'm a fan.
Well, I'd love to start, since we've already begun playing Kiss from a Rose. I'd love to hear from you about sort of how the song developed, the session, the gear to the degree that you know it, and use that as our jumping off point today for the interview.
How did it begin? Well, it began about 3 or 4 years before I actually recorded my first album, even though Kiss from a Rose ended up on the second album. I'd written it maybe about 2 to 3 years before the release of the first album, before I even had a record deal. And the reason I wrote it was because I just got my hands on a Tascam 244, which for those of you who don't know is an old 4-track. And we used to use cassette tapes with, normal cassette tapes with an A and a B side. And with the 4-track Porter Studios, they were called in England, what you could do is you could split the tape, you could multi-track a cassette tape up until about 16 tracks before it would start degrading. Actually, probably about 8, but those cheapos among us, we pushed it to 16. And so I couldn't figure out how to work this thing, but I knew, obviously I bought it for its multi-tracking capabilities. And so I couldn't play an instrument at the time. Some could argue I still can't, but that's up for debate. And so basically trying to figure out how to work this thing, I started multi-tracking, and I tried to imagine what an orchestra would do. Because obviously that would be the most obvious thing, in my mind, to try and multi-track. So that would explain why Kiss from a Rose has those quite orchestral parts, and it's quite different from anything else I've written. So da 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 da. That would be like a string line or
cello,
or cello, and then. I've been kissed by a rose. One that would be kind of like, I guess, something that a flute would play, and so it was me trying to impersonate an orchestra. I couldn't tell you what the heck I was singing. Well, I kind of could tell you what I was singing about at the time, but it was me trying to impersonate an orchestra, and I made my first 4-track demo. Which was Kiss from a Rose. And I didn't really think of it as, a seminal song or something that I would be known for or most known for in the future, because it really kind of started off as a semi-experiment. And I think there's a huge lesson in that, because when you're making music in a very free-flowing state, where you're not trying to write a hit or trying to write a great song, or trying to do any of those things. You somehow kind of you do without doing, and you have this almost like subconscious approach to writing. And so yeah, that's how it started. And then a friend of mine had heard it, and he obviously thought more of it than I did. And when I eventually ended up signing a record deal with ZTT Records and Trevor Horn, who, my producer, he asked me about this song. Like my friend who's sadly no longer with us, Paul, he told Trevor about this song, that's this Rose song that Seal had written, and Trevor asked me about it when after I signed, and I said, "Oh no, it's no good. Paul doesn't really know what he's talking about." And so I didn't play it to him, and that's why it never really ended up on the first album. So after the success of the first album, we came around to making the second album. Paul kept telling him, Seal's got this song, you should get him to play it to you, and I wouldn't. And then finally, Trevor kind of badgered me enough, and he said, like, what is this song that Paul keeps talking about? And I was in Studio 4, I remember. Tim, are you there? Tim, my brother and engineer of 35 years now, 34 years, he engineered this. Is Tim there? He's probably disappeared.
Tim.
But I think we were in Studio 4. Studio 4 was, Studio 4 at Psalm West Studios. And that was, in my mind, that was the kind of, and in the minds of many people, actually, that was the best, most kind of revered studio in England at the time. It was in West London. And it had 4 studios, 4 rooms, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And Trevor's, his place was Studio 4. That was his room that he occupied 90% of the time. And we were in the studio when he was in Studio 4 when he was asking me about Kiss from a Rose again. And finally I got frustrated and I went, okay, it goes like this. Da 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 da. And I got the string lines go, I've been kissed by a rose, baby. And then he's, you can always tell when Trevor gets excited about something because he used to wear these thick glasses at the time, right? Like, because he has not the greatest eyesight. And he would kind of look. He'd be behind the mixing desk. In those days when we used to actually have consoles, he would be behind the desk in between the NS10s, and he'd be like sticking one together, as we say, be rolling one. And whenever he heard something that he knew was a hit, his eyes would get big, and he went, and then in his kind of like in only the way that he can say it, he went, "See, why don't you just go in the control booth and sing those parts for me?" And so I went in the control room, in the vocal booth, sorry. Why don't you go in the vocal booth and sing those parts? I went in the vocal booth and spent about, I don't know, anywhere between half an hour to an hour singing all of the parts that I'd sang on the original. Funnily enough, he found that demo. I should have brought it in. He found that demo the other day and sent it to me. I've got it somewhere. Anyway, that's a longer conversation. So I sang those parts. I spent about 35 minutes to an hour singing all of those parts. And then I went away. I came back about 4 days later. And he had this whole backing track that he'd put together with, he had he'd got, I think it was Betsy Cook, I'm not sure, to do the string arrangement. He'd had this whole string arrangement and that was Kiss from a Rose. And so I sang the parts properly and that was it. That's how it came about.
Wow. How many tracks do you think those harmonized vocals were?
If Tim is here, is Tim in the control room? Because I don't want to give you false information and he would be, Tim, how many vocal tracks?
Looks like 16.
16?
16.
Oh, 16 vocal tracks. But they were all each harmony was at least 8 times, right? So 16 vocal tracks. But each harmony, aside from the lead vocal, obviously, which is not a harmony, but each harmony that you hear was multi-tracked 8 times, wow. a minimum of 8 times.
Wow.
But that's how we used to do it back then. We wouldn't put it in the machine now, that the doubler. And we wouldn't use auto tune or anything like that. We'd sing it until he'd make me sing it until I got it right. I would sing it over and over and over again. Until I got one harmony that was in tune, right? And then he'd say, right, track to that. And then I would have to do that another 7 times. Then we go into the next harmony, and that's how we would do it.
Do you remember what vocal mic you used for that?
67, was it? Probably a 67. Mind you, he used to have this B&K mic that they used for strings, ugly looking thing, right? And like really pointy. And I couldn't stand singing into it. So but it sounded great to his ears. So what he would do a lot of the time, he'd put a 67 up and have it off. But he'd have the B&K beside it just so that he could get the vocals. So I'm not really sure whether it was the B&K or the 67, but my guess is that it was a 67.
Do you have any sense of any like vocal processing that would have been used as far as compressors or anything like that?
Compressors, the Tube Tech. It would have been a Tube Tech.
Yeah.
The blue Tube Tech. What is that 1LB or what's it called, Tim?
Yeah. Yep.
The Tube Tech 1LB, it probably was that. And what desk were we singing through? The euphonics. Euphonics. Yeah.
And as far as like other musicians on that song, was it just the string section and then the kind of the track that Trevor built, or were there other drum or bass or that were on that?
Yeah, there were. I can't read. Honestly, my memory is terrible. Which is great. What that you're here. Who was actually on it, Tim? If you say, we cut the backing track at Peter Gabriel's place in Real World.
Okay.
And Phil Spalding played on an English bass player. He played the original bass line on it. Harvey Mason on drums.
So you flew him out then from
and then we used this this American musician with a big knife, and he replaced Phil Spalding's parts.
Okay.
Yeah, and we couldn't erase him after that, for fear of being chopped to pieces by that knife.
Wow. Well, I mean, I know you've told a lot about this in how it sort of catapulted you into fame, because of the connection with the Batman movie and all that stuff. And I won't get you to go into that because I know that there are a lot of other interviews where you tell that story. But what I'm really interested in as far as the Kiss from a Rose is, you won a Grammy for that song.
Yes.
And I actually have a little photo here of you on the evening where you're with
Annie Lennox.
Annie Lennox, your countrywoman. She's from the UK, right? She's not Irish or anything.
She's Scottish.
She's Scottish, okay. Yeah. And you guys both cleaned up, I think, at that particular Grammys.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, like, did you have a sense that it was a likely possibility that you would win that, or like what was kind of your mentality going into the evening, if you remember?
Well, I knew we had a good chance because it was number one, and it didn't really sound like anything else.
Yeah,
it didn't sound like anything before or after, to be quite honest. And so I knew we had a chance, but I guess, winning a Grammy, let alone 3, and I think Trevor won Producer of the Year too, so it's 4 in total. That was beyond my wildest dreams. I didn't. If I told you I knew or I suspected we were going to be that successful with it, I'd be lying. But again, you touched upon how the song came to prominence, and it was one of those songs where, and I do tell this story to people when I'm mentoring young artists because it is relevant in that you have to do music, first of all, for yourself, and you have to do it for the love of music. It has to, you do it because you're compelled to do it, not necessarily because you are trying to do it for a specific purpose, to become successful or to have a hit. I'm not saying that that's not possible. I'm just saying that there's a certain element of authenticity that comes into play when you are compelled to do music because it's just something that has to come through you rather than you are doing it in a Machiavellian sense. I A Kiss from a Rose was the fourth single from the second album to be released, and I remember it went into the charts at number 65, dropped to number 80 the next week, and that was the last of it.
What were the other singles, like Bring It On or
Newborn Friend, Prayer for the Dying, and possibly Bring It On, right? And Kiss from Roses was the last one, and it did nothing.
Yeah.
Like it did nothing. It was it came and went. In fact, it didn't even come, to be honest. It just went. And I was, back in the studio, starting the third album, Human Beings, which we may touch upon later. And Joel Schumacher called me up and he said, "Look, Seal, I'm a big fan. I'm making this movie called Batman Forever, and I need a song for the love scene between Kidman and Kilmer. Do you have anything?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't. I've finished promotion of my second album. It's I'm back in the studio." And Bob Cavallo, God bless him, he was on the call at the moment, and he told me to shut up, and he said, "Joel, I'm going to send you something." And he sent Joel a copy of my second album, and he put an asterisk next to Kiss from a Rose, because I guess Bob believed in it, and he said, "Listen to this song." And Joel called back, God rest his soul. He's passed on now. Joel called back the next day, and he said, "You know what? I temped the song in the scene, and it's just completely wrong. It doesn't fit. But I just love the song so much. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stick the song on the end credits, right?" And actually, U2 had the song.
What was the song that they put on there for you?
I can remember it in my head, but I can't remember what it was called. I can remember... Down, 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 down. It was an odd song. But anyway, Kiss from a Rose came after that on the end credits as the movie was ending. And so, 8 million albums and, 4 Grammys later, everyone's like, "Oh, we always knew." And by the way, the song didn't change. We didn't re-edit it. We didn't recut it. It was exactly the same song that went into the charts at 65, dropped to number 80 the next week, and was gone, dead. No one heard it, right? And there I was sitting on this song with these Grammys and these record sales, and all of a sudden this song became a household. I mean, I had the American military calling me up for permission, seriously, to play it in their dressage. For permission to play it. And there was a big lesson in that, because did the song change? No. The difference was that the last, however big the kind of the promotional machine of a record is, when it comes to a movie, it's massive. Like, millions are spent on that, like tens of millions are spent on the promotion. It's a promotional juggernaut. And the difference is that the last thing that people heard when they were leaving the theater was "Baby," and so it got, and also Joel made a video.
Right. And you're by the kind of the bat signal.
Yeah, by the bat signal. So and he made it. Actually, I've got to tell a little bit about the original video was made by a guy called Matthew Rolston, right? And it was terrible. It's a shocking video. It was kind of a pastiche of, God, it was like, it was a pastiche of David Hemmings in Blow Up, and I was this kind of sexy 60s studio photographer that was, photographing these models, and it was completely just like missed out. It was so wrong and so like corny. And that actually cost me like hundreds of thousands. Joel made a video, the video for Kiss from a
Yep.
Rose, where he cut in bits of the movie,
Yep.
right, and got me singing in front of the bat lights. He made it for like 40 grand. He didn't even take a fee. He said, like, I don't want a fee for it. I'm just going to do it for them because it's all good for the movie.
Yeah.
Made it for 40 grand. And because it had bits of the movie in it, and it was, you had the promotional juggernaut of, behind it. MTV didn't even like the song, but they had to play it.
Yeah.
They had to play the video. And then as soon as like it, the difference was that people actually, it's an odd song if you think about it. It's like, what is it? Is it R&B? Well, not really. It's got R&B elements, but it's kind of this weird Celtic melody in this 3/4, and there were no pop songs no pop hits with the 3/4 signature. It's a waltz. Like 1, 2, 3, 2. So MTV went into playing it, but eventually they had to, and then the difference was that people heard it come. That was the last thing they heard coming out of the movie theater, and it suddenly clicked. It was like, wow, that's a really good song. It's really unusual. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I really like it. And songs like that are not necessarily that immediate to begin with, but that are slow burners where they grow on you, they tend to have legs, and it had, till this day, it has incredible staying power. So I always think that's a really good lesson in when you're talking to young aspiring artists, is that you have to, in the words of my dear old friend Bowie, you have to live dangerously. You have to constantly make yourself uncomfortable. You have to keep pushing. You have to, bless you. You have to, you don't play safe. You have to, there has to be passion and heart in it.
So what was the timeline gap between when Kiss from a Rose had fallen off the charts and then when Batman had released? Oof. Was that months? Was that years, or a year?
No, a few months.
Okay.
Few months. Not that long, no.
Interesting. Yeah. And the, I definitely remember the video and that whole thing. And it's kind of a crazy turn of events.
Kids thought I was Batman. Seriously.
Really?
Yeah, till this day. Well, they've grown up now, but I don't think they think so anymore. But I remember, kids used to come up to me and they used to think I was Batman.
I guess it's the music video. Yeah.
Everyone saw the video. They hadn't even seen the movie.
Yeah.
And they thought I was Batman.
Do you remember the first time you heard it on the radio?
No, I don't. I remember the first time I heard Kiss from a Rose, Pray for the Dying on the radio.
Uh-huh.
But Kiss from a Rose, no, I don't remember the first time I heard it on the radio. All I remember was that I couldn't stop hearing it on the radio.
Yeah.
Like it just, it even made me sick after a while, to be honest. I just couldn't get away from it. Thank God.
We will get right back to the interview with Seal, but before we do, I want to talk to you about Telefunken Microphones. Now you can see throughout the video here that Seal is exclusively using a U47 by Telefunken. Now the U47 comes at quite a high price point, but Telefunken has released an alternative as part of their Alchemy series that embodies the spirit of the U47 and that classic German sound, but in a much more affordable price point. It's called the TF17 FET. And it has all of the great features that you would love of a U47 style microphone. It features the K47 style center terminated capsule. It has the OEP Carnhill output transformer, and it's going to deliver that warm, punchy sound whether you're doing vocals, strings, guitar, piano, whatever it may be. It's an absolute workhorse of a mic and is going to give you that classic German sound that you would expect of a U47, again, at a very budget-friendly price point. And if you wanted to upgrade from there, there's also the TF47, which is the tube-based version of the TF17 FET. Really great sounding microphone that offers that same lineage in terms of the U47 as its inspiration. Again, an amazing microphone. We will have all these listed in the description in addition to on screen here. If you're interested in these, you can head over to the Telefunken website and check those out with the direct links that you see below and again in the description. Also, Telefunken has generously agreed to give away a TF-17 to one of our viewers. If you would like to register and enter to win this microphone, all you need to do is head over to our Instagram page. You need to follow us at Vertex Effects, follow Telefunken, follow Seal, and tag a friend who you think would be interested in this content on any one of the posts that we have that we've either shared or collaborated on or done individually about this interview with Seal. There'll be many throughout the week of the release of this video, and this will be going for 14 days following the release of the initial video that you can register to win, and then we will announce a winner. Now back to the interview with Seal.
What kind of would you say is kind of one of the big influence that you think kind of informed your music kind of before Killer was out, before Crazy was out? What were you listening to? What was kind of taking root in you and developing you as an artist?
That's a great question. See, when I decided that I was going to choose music as my career, when I committed, I always had a relationship with music, and I always knew that I could sing. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I always felt that it would be something that I would eventually end up doing. But there was a long time between those initial thoughts and when I actually committed. I committed around 23. And that's when, that's quite an interesting point, because once you commit to something, once you are all in, you are now saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So, of course, you're setting yourself up for failure, because if you don't succeed at that, if you've committed to it and you don't succeed, then you failed. Then but then that's the only way. I later found out, and perhaps I knew at the time that was the only way. You couldn't sort of be like, well, I'm going to try singing or I'm going to try music, and if it doesn't work out, I have a plan B. There can be no plan B. Mm-hmm. There are no plan Bs. Mm-hmm. It's either this or nothing. Mm-hmm. And that was the attitude that I had, because it was that kind of attitude that formed my belief. There was no question that I was going to have commercial success at some point. Mm-hmm. I didn't want it really badly. Everyone wants it really badly. I knew it. I knew it was going to happen. And when I would make demos or songs, that were mostly crap, and take them around to record companies, I just thought they were all deaf. Yeah. I thought, well, how can you not hear it? I can hear it. In truth, the songs weren't very good. But there was an interesting thing that happened. You say, what were my influences? I grew up listening to Stevie Wonder. Very much so. My mother played a lot of Bacharach and Dionne Warwick when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And when I started making music, or I didn't play guitar at the time, and I was making these demos, and they were interesting. They had bits in them, but they were mostly kind of unfocused. Yeah. And there was a band in a recording studio where I used to work called Big Audio Dynamite. It was Mick Jones's second band from, Mick Jones from The Clash. Mm. It was his second band. And there was a drummer from Big Audio Dynamite. I think his name was Greg. And he knew that I was trying to get my act together. Mm. And he'd heard me sing, I think. And he made me a cassette tape. And on that tape, I'll never forget, was Sly Stone, mm-hmm. a lot of the Fresh album, Joni Mitchell, some CSN. And it was like that scene in Almost Famous, where Kate Hudson, where she's having a row with her parents and she's leaving home to go and join the band, to go on tour with the band. And they're saying, you're going to be a waste of time and wasted space. And she shouts to her little brother, who I guess is Cameron Crowe, and she goes, "Look under the bed, it'll set you free." And he goes under the bed and he finds her albums.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, this guy that made this tape, Greg from Big Audio Dynamite, when he made that tape for me, I listened to it and with those aforementioned artists on there, and it became so obvious why I couldn't get a record deal. And I went, wow! It was the first time I understood what it was going to take, and that I wasn't quite there yet. And I didn't write a lick of music for a year. All I did was get my hands on everything by those artists. I got my hands on every Hendrix album, every Hendrix recording. I got, Zep 1, 2, and 3. I deep dived into Joni Mitchell. I mean, I knew about Joni before, but I really deep dived into her. And I got heavily into CSN, and I started understanding harmonic structure. And at the end of that year, I went, okay, well, one of the things that these artists that I've been so inspired by all have in common is that they play an instrument. They're not just singers or songwriters, they actually play an instrument. And I figured, well, what would be the best thing for me to learn? And I couldn't, I was a bit of a wanderer and I couldn't put a piano on my back. So I picked up the guitar in the studio where I was working. Like bands would come in at night, or during the day, and when they would leave at night, I go pick up their guitars. And I'm left-handed, so I couldn't go restringing their guitars. I just played it upside down. And I remember the guy who owned the studio, he said to me, if you play the E shape, right, and the A shape, and if you just know those two shapes and you move them up and down the neck, you can pretty much play the basis of any song. You could write any song. So I went, but we're never gonna survive. We get a little crazy. No one ever gonna survive unless we get a little. So it's basically the E and the A shape. So I did that, and that was the first song after that year that I wrote on guitar. And then I put this bit. A man decides after 70 years what he goes out for. And I wrote Crazy in about 25 minutes. It all kind of fell out. And that was I knew I had one. When I wrote that, I went, okay, I got one. I knew, because it sounded different from all the other songs, aside from Kiss from Rose, but it sounded different from all of the crappy demos that I was making. It didn't sound like me trying to do a song like any of the artists that I'd heard before, whatever was in the current top 10. It didn't sound like any of them. For the first time, it sounded like Seal.
And had you written Crazy before Killer had come out? No.
No.
Okay.
No, Killer was. Actually, that's a good question. Possibly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Around the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that you also mentioned to me in terms of sort of contemporary or maybe 10 years before, you were really making music professionally, like with Killer and Seal One and Crazy. You were talking to me about Steve McQueen.
All right.
And the influence that had on you as like as a band and their tunes. Can you kind of? I know there was something that we had talked about. Maybe you playing an example of it.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you could tell me like what their impact was on you, because it wasn't a band that I had heard of until you kind of hit me to it.
Prefab Sprout, yeah. I mentioned before that that my mother, who was a wig maker in the 60s, she was a big fan of Dionne Warwick, who, of course, was the muse of Bacharach and
Yeah.
David.
Yep.
And so I was raised on I guess what you might call sophisticated pop music.
Yeah.
Because the music that she sang and the music that they wrote, it wasn't conventional pop. It was.
Yeah, you have Burt
they had
Bacharach's jazz
yeah,
changes
those
and all this.
oh God, the most beautiful chord progressions and melodic structure, and her voice is just incredible. But and so I grew up with with my ear being accustomed to that kind of melodic structure in pop music, and so it came as no surprise that when I heard Prefab Sprout's seminal album, Steve McQueen, actually was called Two Wheels Good in America, and it was called Steve McQueen in England. I think they had to change it for copyright reasons.
Oh, right.
When I heard Prefab Sprout's album, I just was floored by it, and till this day, I love every song off of that record, and that was a song that that was an album that really inspired me, but also gave me permission to to write songs like "Kiss from a Rose,"
Right.
to write songs like "Color," which
Right.
is a song that you talked about
Yeah.
the other day. Yeah.
Well, I noticed that the commonality that they have is that they're able to develop really sophisticated melodies with very simple chords.
Yes.
And like when you mentioned Color kind of being based around two chords, or Kiss from a Rose, or Crazy, you're creating these uber complex melodic structures of a song, but but it's coming from these very simple roots, and it's incredible when you've sort of in some ways limited the what's available for you to paint on the canvas, and you yet have this just completely illuminating song that comes from it. And I think that there is a similarity that I was noticing in those kind of how they structure their songs and what you're able to do.
Well, I tend to thrive on anytime I can avoid defining a chord.
Yeah.
Like if I can leave it as, I guess it's one of the reasons I love Joni so much, because there are a lot of drones and they're kind of,
Right.
Anytime I can avoid defining a chord, I feel liberated. I feel like I have freedom to do unconventional things with the melody.
Yeah. There's unquestionably like this color that's brought to your music, and I love the fact that like as you mentioned, like Joni Mitchell's another example of that, with her, and she was using a lot of open tunings to kind of create that space. But I just love to hear the interpretation that you have of Steve McQueen, if you're so willing.
Of Bonny, I think it's called. Yeah, let's see if we can.
The song's called Bonny.
Yes.
So the album was Steve McQueen.
The album was
and
Steve
Prefab
McQueen.
Sprout's the band.
Yeah, and let's have a look. Oh, let's have a look at this. I count the days of my vanity. I'm lost in heaven and I'm lost to earth. Didn't give you minutes, not even moments. All my life in a tower of foil. Shaded feelings, I don't believe you. You were there before my eyes. No one planned it, took it for granted. I count the hours since it slipped away. I count the hours that I lie awake, yeah. the seconds too. On a stone that I took from you. Now Bonny don't live at home. Bonny don't live at home. Words won't hold you. Broken soldiers. Silence and my stained respect, yeah. Missed chances and the same regrets. Kiss the thief and you save the rest. All my insights and retrospects. Now Bonny don't live at home. The hours since you slipped away. I count the hours that I lie awake, yeah. I count the minutes and the seconds too. On a stone that I took from you. Now Bonny don't live at home. Don't live at home. Save your speeches, flowers are for funerals. Save your speeches, flowers are for funerals. Save your speeches, flowers are for funerals.
We will get right back to the interview with Seal, but before we do, I want to talk to you about the quad cortex that I've been using for the entirety of this interview while I'm accompanying Seal with that beautiful 1966 Strat. I'm using the Jubu Smith preset, which I created with Jubu, which is based around a Roland JC120 style sound with just a little bit of reverb and a little bit of compression. Beautiful clean sound, whether you're going to be adding pedals or just want to maintain the integrity of your instrument. Now, that's available for free over on the Cortex Cloud. Head over to the Vertex Effects page there and you'll be able to download it yourself, in addition to many other amplifiers that we've captured and pedals. Plus, if you want to get 20% off any of the plugins over on the Neural DSP website, you can do so using the coupon code below and listed in the description. It'll get you 20% off any plugin that is 90 days or older, and if there's something new that you're interested in, just wait that 3-month period and then you'll be able to redeem that coupon on that very same amp plugin that you're interested in. Now back to the interview with Seal.
Very simple chords.
But you do it such justice.
Thank you, brother.
Oh man,
could have played it a little slower, but there you go.
I love it. I know. I think it's a beautiful song, and I would say you're more of my introduction to it than my familiarity with the original. So I'll have to go back.
It's a great record, I tell you. For those who don't know, Thomas Dolby produced the record. Brilliant, beautiful record.
Yeah,
beautiful record. God,
so the band Prefab Sprout, and then Steve McQueen is the name of the record in the UK,
and Two Wheels Good in America.
Two Wheels Good in America.
But I think even on Spotify, it's Steve McQueen. I think.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. So, getting back to Crazy, which you've already touched on a little bit in sort of the development. You had mentioned to me that you had already had some success with Killer, and that is kind of what catapulted you to be able to then leverage Crazy, get that released, and create Seal One. Can you kind of walk us through kind of that evolution from Killer to Crazy to Seal One?
From Killer to Crazy to Seal One. Well, Killer,
or if I've got it reversed in any component.
No, you're right. Well, Killer was I met this great artist who came up through the dance scene, the kind of second coming of the Summer of Love, as we affectionately referred to it. And it was the huge dance music. Basically, it was the birth of modern dance music.
Mhm.
All of the dance and club music you hear today, most of the house music, came from that period. I think I watched a documentary on it, and over here in America, it was happening in Detroit and New York.
Mhm.
It was coming out of Detroit and New York, and in England, it was mainly coming out of parts of up north, like Manchester, Birmingham, but mainly London.
Mhm.
And so, Killer was a product of a combination of that whole psychedelic dance scene that kind of really took birth in 88, 89 in Europe. It was a combination of that and a song that I had kind of messed around with. And I met this guy who was really successful in that in that period. He was one of the kind of most revered DJs, the first of that kind, DJs who kind of played as well. He was a musician, but he was seen as like a DJ slash musician. A guy called Adam Tinley Adamski, and I'd just come back from a year of traveling through Asia. And had some massive life-changing experiences where I was, some incredible adventures, which I will always have the most fond memories of. I mean, it's a much, much longer story, but so I won't go into it now. But anyway, I'd come back from this year of traveling through Asia only to kind of land in this dance explosion that had happened in Europe. And Adam Tinley was at the center of that. And I was a very different person to the one that left, in 87, in 88, 87, 87, 88. I knew about him, and people would tell him about me. They would say, there's this guy because the music he did was instrumental. It was all instrumental. A lot of the stuff of that time was instrumental. There were very few songs of that nature, or tracks of that nature that had an actual song attached to it. They were kind of sort of riffs and remixes and things like that. Not all of them, but most of them. And so people told him there's this guy called Seal, who's kind of causing a bit of a stir at the raves. He would always be singing at the top of his voice. And, you guys should do something together. And we never really met, but we'd kind of see one another around at these raves. And I remember New Year's Eve, we were at Spike and Neville's rave in North London. And, in a kind of drug-hazed stupor, we met each other, and I think he said to me, like, Seal, are we going to do a track together or what? And I was like, yeah, sure. And the next day, I remember it was on New Year's Day 1990, because we were at a New Year's party at Spike and Neville's party. New Year's Day 1990, I met him in the studio in Hammersmith, and he played me this rhythm track he had called The Killer. And I'd written this terrible a song, or kind of attempt at a song called Killer, which was kind of, it was before I'd written Crazy, and it went, so you want to be free. It was kind of like this terrible pastiche of a Zeppelin song, but it was called Killer. And he played me the instrumental, and I just sang that melody. He played me, this brilliant instrumental track that went bum 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 bum. I went, so you want bum 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 to be free. And he went, great. That's what I loved it, right? But then at that time, I was really into songs. I loved dance music, and I loved club music, and the music we were listening to in raves. But I loved songs. For me, it was all about songs. And I remember singing that verse, and he went, "Great, that's all we need." And I took the demo of in the rough board mix away that night, and I was like, it needs something more. But then, he had when I stopped singing, there was in retrospect, probably not that much, but there was stuff going on. The keyboards and the noises, they took the center stage when I wasn't singing. But I knew it needed something else, and I remember there was something in there was this noise in the keyboards that went ow, 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 ow. Ow, 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 and I went, okay, so if I'm going to come up with something, it has to be, in order for me to find space in there, it has to be either something that's already doing a melody that I have to, or at least a rhythm, or it has to suggest whatever it is I'm going to sing. So it was going, ow, 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 ow. It was a weird keyboard noise. Ow, 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 ow. And then I went like this, ow, 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 ow. Solitary brother, is there still a part of you that wants to live? Ow, 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 ow. That was a Kent. And I called Adam the next day. I said, you got to let me come and sing this part. And he was like, really? I go, yeah, you got, trust me. So I went in and, because they didn't have any more studio time, but they opened the studio and went in and sang that part. And I just, did I know it would go on to be number one or whatever, or have the success? No, but I knew it was more of a song. It had bits. You had, so you want to, it had the chorus, and then it had solitary brother, and then there's no other love. There is no other love like mine. As a middle eight, I think I sang that afterwards. And that was it. It went to number one across Europe. And I didn't have a record deal. He was signed to MCA Records, but I didn't have a record deal. They tried to sign me, but they, typical of record companies, then they were offering me this shitty deal. I mean, the worst deal, and I guess if it was years before, if it was earlier on in my journey, I would have probably had the attitude, oh, wow, this is my chance. And I would have signed it. But I couldn't care less at that point. I was doing music for the love of music. And I wasn't trying to be famous or trying to get a record deal. I just knew who I was. I understood, and you're probably right. I did have Craze at that time. And I was just, there was a confidence that came from a knowing, not from a wanting. I had really found who I was, and I knew what my destiny was. And so I didn't sign it because I just didn't think it was fair. And so communication between myself and MCA Records broke down. And they, they said things like, well, we're going to release the record, but we won't promote you or what have you. And I said, look, okay, well, fine, whatever. And so they didn't promote the record, but what happened is it gathered momentum in this dance scene.
Yeah.
And radio wouldn't play the record at first because there was some kind of terrible stigma attached to kind of acid house music at the time. But it just got so huge. By through the dancing, people bought the records. They had to have that record, and it got into the charts. And once it got into the top 20, then radio had to play it, and then it worked its way all the way to number one. So the reason I tell that story is because I found myself in this really unusual position of having co-written and sang on what they refer to as a pan-European #1 song, but I didn't have a record deal. I was unsigned.
So did they just treat it like you had like a writing credit or something like that, and they were just paying you points for it, or how did they structure it?
No, I mean, I had 50% of the publishing.
Wow, so they probably really hated that. They probably really wanted you to sign.
And I had 50% of the publishing, and you know, and I'm singing on most of the songs, so they had to put me in the video in the end, and you know, even though it came out under Adamski, they had to put me in the video, and eventually, you know, I was together with Adam at #1 without a record deal. And so I'd been banging on the door trying to get these guys to sign me, you know, these guys who I thought were all deaf. I went from that to kind of fending off half a dozen of the major labels, all trying to sign me. And I went around and I kind of interviewed them, you know, and when I met Trevor, and Jill, God rest her soul, I just knew that was the home for me.
Yeah.
I knew it was. And Trevor, he was just like this genius who believed in me. He saw it all.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he probably didn't even need that, you know, he probably didn't even need to hear, or you know, he didn't even need confirmation of Killer. If I'd met him before, he probably would have seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at that point you had already had Crazy, and you brought that to him when you signed with.
I said, yeah, and that was, and what happened, Crazy was the first, we didn't have an album. We had success of Killer.
Yeah.
And so we were chasing to, you know, that already set the pace. We had to come up with the second single.
Yeah.
So Trevor heard Crazy, and there was no question that Crazy was going to be as a debut artist, you know, as Seal, because people kind of knew me as the singer on Adamski. In fact, some people thought I was Adamski, you know, in the mainstream. But my first record as a solo artist, Seal, was always going to be Crazy. So we got in the studio and we finished that. We finished it and then we released it.
Before the album.
Before the album was finished. And so we were kind of, you know, we were racing against time.
That's kind of the cadence of stuff now, where you would release a single like that in advance of an album.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so, but except that I don't believe the same due care and attention is paid to. We were kind of, you know, we were in the rat race. You know, we were racing against the clock to finish the album. But all that did is that it induced a sense of urgency. It in no way affected the integrity with which we made the record. You know, Trevor was going to take as long as it took. Yeah. You know, to you know, he believed that in order to make good records, you know, that withstood the test of time, it took time. Yeah. To make them, and you had to exhaust a lot of possibilities. But there was a sense of urgency, and it was great.
How long was the gap between when you released Crazy and then when Seal One came out as a full album?
I think it was a matter of months. I mean, Tim would probably know better, but it wasn't. Maybe 6 months, maybe.
Yeah. The interesting thing, you know, we're talking about the great Trevor Horn. His background was, you know, the Buggles video killed the radio star. And yet he's had this, you know, like it seemed so disconnected to the things that he produced.
Well, no, you see, that was the interesting thing, is when I actually signed to ZTT Records, Trevor's label, one of the big reasons I signed to that label was when I walked into the record company. It was, first of all, it looked different from any other record company that I'd seen. And I looked on the wall and I saw propaganda, yes, 90125, Honor of the Lonely Heart, ABC Lexicon of Love, Frankie, Relax.
Yeah.
Right. And then I made the connection and I was like, oh, it's the same producer. And I love 90125. Oof, I love that record.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, that was a huge record for me. You know, like I guess call it prog rock, but it was amazing. Like
Yeah.
I tell you, you put on Honor of the Lonely Heart right
Oh,
now,
yeah. Yeah.
and it's mind
Yeah.
blowing what's going on in
Absolutely.
that record. And I made the connection that it was the same producer, and so it seemed I knew that was my home. I knew
Yeah.
that was the place. I knew that because every single one of those artists I just
Yeah.
named from that label, they were not conventional. They
Yeah.
were all kind of odd, but they somehow
Yeah.
had that same thing, you know, sophisticated kind of pop
Yeah.
music,
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely. Well, I'm wondering, Seal, if you might be willing to play a little bit of Crazy for us and sing a
Sure.
little bit, if you wouldn't
We'll
mind.
do that. And well, you were going to play together, right? You can, I mean, you
I
can,
don't know. I don't know.
yeah,
But
we'll do it.
what are the chords for Crazy?
Real simple, like all my songs, E, G, A, I think.
Man decides after 70 years that what he goes there for is to unlock the door. But those around him, they criticize and sleep. And through a fractal on a breaking wall, I see you, my friend, and touch your face again. Miracles will happen as we trip. But we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy. No, we're never gonna survive unless we have a little crazy. Yellow people walking through my head. One of them's got a gun to shoot the other one, and yet together they were friends at school. If I were there when we first took the pill, then baby, miracles will happen as we speak. Oh, but we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy. No, we're never gonna survive unless we have a little crazy. Survive unless you get a little bit crazy. No, we'll never survive unless you get a little bit in a sky full of people. People, love, in a heaven of people, yeah. In a sky full of people, there's only someone to fly. Isn't that crazy? Crazy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Love, love, love.
We will get right back to the interview with Seal, but you may have noticed that throughout the video, Seal is performing with a carven guitar, which is now called Kiesel. And Kiesel offers this very same model called the AC-275. And essentially what it is an acoustic electric instrument where you can still hear it acoustically, but the primary purpose of it is to get great acoustic tone without the issues of feedback and have the playability of an electric guitar. Seal has actually told me that he found this to be one of the best performing acoustic electric instruments for the purposes of live performance for these very same reasons. Because trying to capture the full essence of an acoustic instrument on a live stage can be a very difficult thing to do, and to do it without, again, that issue of feedback. What the Kiesel instrument does is allows him to be able to get that signature acoustic sound that you would hear on a lot of the records and being able to translate them in a way that really makes sense for the purposes of the stage. And in case you wanted to check out the AC-275 yourself, I'm going to have the website listed below on screen in addition to the description, so it'll take you right to the page where you can go and customize this instrument for yourself. Remember, Kiesel is a custom shop. You can make the guitar exactly the way that you want it, customize the tuning keys, customize the color, whether you want a natural top or some other combination thereof, and get that instrument sent directly to you and know that you're getting the fit and finish of a high quality instrument. Now back to the interview with Seal.
So crazy. Love it. Thank you for including me despite my inability as a guitar player. I appreciate you
no, not at all.
dragging me, kicking and screaming. This will be my singular claim to fame as a guitar player, is accompanying Seal on one occasion.
Come on, dude.
Well, I want to go forward from Seal 1 back to Seal 2. I know we started with Kiss from a Rose, but there's so many songs that I love on Seal 2 that were instrumental in my upbringing. And a quick personal story, and I know this is not about me, it's about you, but I think it's sort of emblematic of the influence that your work has had on me. Every year we would my dad would have a conference. He was a city manager of various cities in California. And we would drive up to Monterey, California, which was in the middle of the state. And that was where all the city managers would convene every summer. And I had purchased with my allowance the Seal 2 cassette tape. And we would listen to that in my dad's city car, which was a Chevrolet Celebrity. It was a 4-door sedan, and it was this kind of ugly champagne color. And we remember we drove up as a family and we listened to that tape the whole way. And so now every time that we drive on the 101, my wife and I and my family, we always listen to Seal 2 to this day, because it's a nostalgic memory for me.
It's crazy how music is like that, you know. It's like how it essentially forms like a soundtrack to a segment of our lives, or segments of our lives. I think that's just the one of the many wonderful things that music can do. You know, and everyone has their album or albums that do that, but really, that's what they are. They're a soundtrack. If life is a movie, then that's the soundtrack to that section. And therein lies the magic, because you can listen to that piece of music and it can take you right back to that place or a number of places. I just think that's always the magical thing with music for me.
Well, we listened to a lot of Seal. I think there was only 3 cassette tapes in my dad's car.
And I was one of them.
It was Seal 2. It was Annie Lennox Diva.
Oh, great company.
Really, really good one. And then I think the other one was I think it was Christopher Cross, the very first one with
sailing on
with the flamingo on the front. Yeah.
I love that record.
Yeah. So
now we're not too far from paradise, and then and not for me. No, we can sail away. Oh, it is na. Oh, beautiful song.
Yeah. But man, I mean, every song on there for me is incredible. But the musicians on there as well. You've got Wendy Melvoin and Lisa. You've got Jeff Beck is on certain tracks. Like, how were you able to find and get all these incredible musicians and get them to agree to play on your record?
Well, just through being lucky, I guess, and also having a brilliant producer who, had a great reputation. And, who doesn't want to play on a Trevor Horn record? You're going to sound great.
Yeah.
Um, and you're going to be heard. And I think that, I was lucky in that I found the only producer for me.
Yeah.
And I do really feel that there's so much that has to happen in the journey of a recording artist. That there's a certain set of things that have to be in place, and having a great producer, sometimes that the producer is the artist, but then that's few and far between in terms of success. But finding the right producer is key, because you're trying to make something that's really special.
Yeah.
That's really what you're trying to do. At least that's what we were trying to do. And I do not know how to produce records. I will never know how to do that. I mean, I sort of know how to do it, but I'm not capable of doing it, because it just requires a degree of objectivity that I just don't have. I have other things. I can sing them, but I can't, and I can write them, but producing them, that's a very difficult thing of the, to the level that is generally required. And so having those musicians, having access to those musicians, it kind of came out of the chemistry of Trevor and I, and all of the great people like Tim, here, who recorded and made that music. Once we released Seal One, we were off to the races. People, that was such a kind of, it was such a unique sounding record. I think that's, look, whilst it wasn't the greatest record since sliced bread, I don't profess to be that, but unique and nothing sounding like it that it was.
Yeah.
It was. And so once we did that, you see, you find that if you can get success with something which is really unique, and something that is not only unique, but then has actual songs on it, that it's not reliant upon a gimmick or a gag, as we used to say, like, whiz bangs and trickery.
Yeah.
And, if you can get commercial success, it's a bit like what I was alluding to earlier with, with the songs of Bacharach and David, and the songs that Dionne Warwick sang, or the Prefab Sprout album. That is a very unique sounding record. But most of all, the songs are great. The songs are great, and the vocals are great, and they're great. They're not good. They're really great. And see, once you have that kind of, if you manage to, and it's very hard, if you manage to break through with not just an album full of good songs. I mean, there are plenty of people that break through with albums of great songs, but songs that are unique, or an album that, okay, they're really good songs, but there's actually nothing that sounds like that. Then you have something really special, and that tends to be a draw for great musicians. Musicians generally want to be involved with them.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I wasn't there, obviously, but it seems like every song on that album is so deliberate and so classy. Like, everything about it. From the guitar fills, and and you got some real masters there with Gus and Chris, and of course Jeff Beck, and just everything about it is just really musical. And when I listen to that record now, it does sound very timeless. The mix sounds very timeless.
Well, you got Tim to thank for that. But I got to tell you, hearing you say this, that's what I was trying to maybe not so eloquently express earlier on with like. A lot of it is the luck of the draw, of finding the right producer. Right. And that was the thing about Trevor. He
cast people incredibly well.
Not just that, but he never, ever shut down an idea. Mm. He always, no matter how harebrained it seemed, or kind of like, how technically not right the idea I had was, he was always one. He would never strangle it. He would never kill the idea. He would always encourage me he would never, like technically I would do things that weren't necessarily correct, but he would never shoot them down. He would always go, well, what? He would always, his thing was, no, it's not wrong. I just don't understand what it is. Mm. And he would try, even if it wasn't clear, he would always try to figure out what it was I was doing. And, I cannot emphasize enough how fortunate you are as an artist if you find that kind of producer, because they are few and far between.
Yeah.
There are plenty of great producers, but ones like that are so open, that are always like looking for that thing that is different and know it when they hear it. Even if they don't understand it, they know it. They know that there's something there.
Yeah.
And that's if you find someone like that, you hold on to them.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about and listen to the song Prayer for the Dying. Mm-hmm. And I want to know, before we listen to it, if there's anything remarkable you can tell us about what you remember about recording that song or writing that song, and how it came to be.
I remember that it was a very difficult song to record, because again, it was like it was one of those songs that it didn't really do what. First of all, it was addressing the subject of mortality, or and it didn't really do what you thought it would do, or in terms of a song. Like, it didn't follow any particular, conventional song structure. And I wrote that with Gus. Gus came up with the music for that. He's brilliant, Gus. But also, I remember it being a difficult record to make. The different, from the song, obviously. The song, okay, we had the song, but to make it work as a record, there were, tons. I think there were even more versions of Prayer for the Dying than there were of Crazy. And there were a lot of versions of Crazy, but Prayer for the Dying, it was like this, we wrestled with that song. And one of the things that Trevor would always say to me, because I kind of lost patience with it, like, I'd lost it. And, he would say to me, I don't have the record yet. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, it sounded great, like, 10 versions ago, 10 mixes ago, it sounded great to me. I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, I don't have the record yet. And I never understood what he meant by that. Then I remember, after it was released, I was driving around, around West London, Notting Hill, Ladbroke Grove, my stomping ground, and the area where Sound West was. And I remember after it was released, I heard it. It came on the radio. You asked me a question about that earlier.
Yeah, when's the first time?
It came on the radio, and I parked the car and listened to it. I had the roof down, and I was listening to my song on the radio, and I got it, and I understood what he meant, and it sounded different. It didn't sound like the song that we had been working on in the studio,
Mm.
it sounded like a record.
Mm-hmm.
The way it came off the radio,
Yeah.
it just sounded like it jumped off and it sounded like it belonged
Mm-hmm.
on the radio, but it stuck out.
So it's not what when you recorded it, you didn't imagine that it would sound like that. Is that?
No, it's the difference between a really good song or a really a really well recorded song that sounds like really good in the studio and a record. They're two different things.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a real kind of, I don't know if it's so much of an art form anymore. It just sounded like it sounded like it belonged it sounded like it had always been on the radio, but it jumped out.
Mm.
It jumped out of the radio, like this shitty little radio in my car. It just jumped out from it. And I went, wow. And that's what he meant when he said he didn't have the record yet.
Yeah.
And I remember when he said he had the record, he said, I got it.
Yeah.
You know, and till this day, I don't know what that is. Tim knows what that is. Trevor absolutely knows what that is. It's a different thing. It's the difference between, you know, a record, like something that I think it's timeless. You know, on the way over here, we drove from, for those, you know, who don't know it, who are listening to this at home or on the internet, you know, we drove from my house over here and I put on this playlist that had, you know, stuff from the 80s and stuff. And we were just like vibing out and we were having fun. You were talking about like how, I bet you that's a Rickenbacker on that song. Yeah. And I was like, I think it's a Telly, you know, and I don't know, it's a Rickenbacker. And we were listening to these songs, you know, that are 40 years old.
Yeah.
And it sounded great. They sound like they belong.
Yeah.
They're records.
Yeah.
You know, they sound timeless.
Yeah.
They sound as great now as they sounded back then. They just don't date. They you know, the song remains the same. And, you know, to coin a phrase, you know, or to quote a phrase, but that's the difference, you know. And when you know, like I when I think back on my career and my body of work, you know, do I think that we recreated the wheel? No. Do you know? Do I think that they're, you know, they are you know, groundbreaking records? No. Do I think that they're the greatest song since sliced bread? No. Do I think my records sound good? Man, my record can sound good.
Yeah.
They sound great.
Unquestionably.
They sound, and I can't take credit for that. That is Tim and that is Trevor. And I am the beneficiary of that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, you know, I sang the songs, you know, and I wrote and co-wrote them and I could hold a tune, right? But in terms of the placing of my vocals, like the meticulous, the time and the energy and the commitment and the dedication and the hours, like, you know, I remember these guys in the studio spending like hours on hours, you know, making like just the mix after mix, just making sure they do everything to secure that timelessness.
Yeah.
The records sound good.
Yeah.
And I cannot be credited for that. I can sing them, yes, but making records is a very specific art form. And I was the fortunate benefactor of working with great engineers, great mix engineers, great recording engineers, and a hell of a producer.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to it. Let's listen to it.
Fearless people, care Sweetwater. Please don't cry, it's just a prayer for the dying. I just don't know what's got into me. Been crossing that bridge with lessons of love. Playing with fire and not getting burned. I may not know what you're going through, but time is the space between me and you. There is a light through that window. Hold on, say yes while people say no. Life carries on. It goes on. I'm crossing that bridge with lessons of love. And not getting burned. I'm playing with fire and not getting burned. I may not know what you're going through, but time is the space between me and you. There is a light through that window. Hold on, say yes while people say no. 'Cause life carries on. It goes on. It goes on. Life carries on. When nothing else matters. When nothing else matters. I just don't know what's got into me. It's just a prayer for the dying. For the dying.
We will get right back to the interview in just a moment, but I wanted to take a chance to talk to you about a service that I really love and use all the time, which is from our friends over at Sweetwater and their used marketplace called the Gear Exchange. Now, the Gear Exchange is a place where you can buy and sell used gear from other gear fanatics just like me and you. And I really love it because one key differentiator from it, from all the other marketplaces out there that you can buy and sell used gear on, is that Sweetwater allows you to maintain 100% of your earnings so long as you put your earnings onto a Sweetwater gift card as opposed to taking them in cash or PayPal or whatever else. Now, the cool thing about this is it allows you to get that extra almost 10% in some cases of earnings and to maintain those so that you can apply to the gear that you want and redeem it on stuff that you'd already be buying. And I can tell you, I'm kind of using this as a glorified layaway program where I sell the gear that I'm not using, I accumulate a nice big group of gift cards, and then I cash them in on other gear that I want. I've already bought 2 great pieces using the Gear Exchange. The first of which, I got a 1960s custom shop Stratocaster, very beautiful, gold hardware, white pick guard, a nice Inca silver aged, a beautifully relic neck. Really love this thing, plays great, kind of has a Robert Cray vibe, which I absolutely love. I was also able to trade in those gift cards for a beautiful Brian Setzer Smoke model signature Gretsch. I've been jonesing for a Gretsch for forever. Didn't have that in my arsenal. Was able to add that as a result of selling some used gear on the Gear Exchange. I was able to pay for both of these instruments fully and fund them completely from selling gear on the Gear Exchange and using those gift cards. So I highly recommend you check it out. You can start an account for free, get buying, get selling, and of course cash them in on some amazing gear available over at our friends at Sweetwater. Now back to the interview.
Okay, so I've listened obviously to that song 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Right, I've played that song 1,000 times, but I've listened to the record a lot. Not that I listen to the record, I put on my own records at home, because I do not do that. But in terms of like the mix, and whenever whenever someone's been playing it, or the time we were recording it, I had to listen to that record a lot of. I listened to it just then. I heard things that I hadn't heard before, and again, that is a tribute to the people that made it. I would sing it. I'd write it. I would sing it, and my patience would. I'd be done.
Yeah.
I'd be done, and then the likes of Tim and Trevor would take the performances of the musicians, and let's just talk about them for a second.
So that was Chris and Gus on guitar? On
That's
that song?
Gus on there. That's Jamie. I can hear on there. That's
Because it sounds like there's a Rhodes in there somewhere as well, maybe.
yes. I'm not quite sure who the Rhodes is. That could be Lisa. It could be Lisa, but
Speaking of Lisa,
it could be Lisa. But then I could hear. I'm listening to it. I could hear Gus all over it. That is so Gus. But I'm listening to it, and I'm realizing that yes, there's incredible playing, like an incredible production. But I'm hearing. I can hear them. I can hear their personalities. I can hear all their souls, and it's. I cannot tell you how fortunate I feel, right, to have written and co-written these songs that are essentially an expression of my DNA, and then hear the souls, not the playing. Yes, their playing is brilliant, but just hearing their commitment to their instrument, the years that it took them to get that good, to hear that on the record. Like I hear Gus, and I hear his playing, and I see him, and I feel his character. I feel his soul.
yeah,
Right. I hear Jamie playing down, 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 down. It's him. It's the movement. Like it's not his playing, it's his soul that I hear, his character, all that I know of Jamie all through the years. I hear that in there. And that's the magical thing. You mentioned earlier on about having these great musicians play on your record, and how does that happen? What is it like? Well, yeah, we talked about that, but what it's like is like, to me, it's immortal. Like now that I hear, and I know these guys today, and we are all older, but that it's their soul, their imprint, their DNA is on that piece of music, and when I listen to it, I don't just remember, I feel where we all were, what we were doing, our highs, our lows, what we were going through, like, who we were with at the time. I feel all of those things in those performances. And again, it takes, I talked earlier on about the records. Look, they're not Let It Be, or like they're not those kind of songs, but what they are is great sounding records.
Yeah.
They sound great.
yeah,
That, and I can say that because I'm not responsible for that, right? But they sound great.
yeah. there's so many of the like little hooks and just like everything on. I mean, I'm mostly focused on the guitar selfishly because of me, but like there's like everything that, whether it's Gus or whether it's Chris, there's like these like palm muted harmonic things that they're kind of bringing in and out. You know, there's like the little like single note kind of like rhythm, like little single note rhythm parts that are in there, and it's all like, it's such a complex symphony of all of these different ideas that are kind of coming together perfectly.
I'm listening to that too, and I'm also listening. You know, for the most part, whenever I listen to it, I listen with a critical ear. Oh shit, could I have sung that bit better? Or kind of like, but like that was one of the few times I'm able to listen to it objectively.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it as, as a bystander, not as the person. And I'm listening to the vocal arrangement and all the things that I'm doing with the vocal, and to do them is one thing. To be able to kind of, if you're a singer and you have you're fortunate in that you have a voice that people like, that's one thing. But then if you meet someone that allows you the freedom, and that's the key, allows you the freedom to simply express, it's like someone taking the harness off of a raw thing that you have, and providing you with a safety net and saying to you, don't worry, be free, jump, I will catch you. I will never make you look bad. I won't let you fall. Just let go. It would be like you as a guitar player, like someone saying to your producer, like, Mason, the chains are off. Go like you go when you're alone and you're just free, and don't worry, I'll catch you. I'm going to put it all on a record, but don't worry, I'm not going to let you, because listen, man, I ain't seen clams like the best of them, and like the rest of them, but having that confidence that you're always gonna be okay, like whatever, however crazy your ideas are, or however kind of experimental they are, what's gonna happen is there's gonna be a guy or a bunch of people that understand you and your voice, and are doing the best to understand it, and they will not let you hurt yourself. They will catch you. That's what I was trying to say about the benefit of finding that producer, of finding that team. It's, Tim and I have known each other for coming on 35 years. He knows my voice better than I do. Like we've been friends and brothers for this long, but like there is an unspoken communication when I never have to tell him anything. Like he knows. I don't. We just go in the studio and we work. There is no like, well, can you do this? Can you do that? No. There's none of that.
Yeah.
It just and that's the luxury. So, and listening to that version of Prayer for the Dying, I love the song, but I love the performances. But God, I love the fact that I had freedom to just sing, because I'm not technically trained. I never went to music school. It's all instinct, and it's all from my soul, and so that's one thing. But having the freedom and the safety and the safe environment to do that's the thing. Because what I'm hearing is me being unsafe in a safe environment.
Yeah. speaking of safe environments and feeling safe, I want to talk to you about one other song
Okay.
on that record that you did a duet with Joni Mitchell.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, boy.
And I'm going to show you a little photo here of you and Joni together. This is a little clip from the music video, presumably, that went alongside this. But you are in a very select crowd of people that have ever done a duet with Joni Mitchell. The song "If I Could" is is one of yours off of the Seal 2 record. Can you tell me about how that collaboration went down? You had mentioned that she was one of your influences. It must have been a real dream come true, not putting words in your mouth.
I would always, quote her as, it for me. Joni was, I found myself in her music, in her songs. And she would be she was and still is a huge influence on me. And then I met her on that Grammy night when she was back at the hotel when they had the Grammy reception after, and I came back and she was there, and my management I remember them saying, "Hey, there's someone who wants to meet you," and I turned around and there she was. And there she was, and she said, "Oh, hi, Seal," and she was more magical and more wonderful than I ever imagined she would be. And she asked me to sing on her record, "How Do You Stop?" Which I said, "When and where?" And so once she had done that, and once I did that, I asked her if she'd sing on "If I Could," and she did, and it was incredible.
And was that the two of you face to face, or was that an overdub, or how did that work?
It was her in the studio. It was an overdub. She got the parts, and that is actually from one of her. That was from "How Do You Stop?"
Okay, that's right.
So that was sung. That was Larry, bass player Larry, who she was married to or she was with for a while. Larry, I've forgotten his last name. Producer.
Okay.
Bass player, beautiful, incredible bass player and producer. And I did, that was "How Do You Stop?" the James Brown song. And I did that over at their house in Bel Air.
Okay.
So that's where and that still is from the video. But "If I Could" was she received the multis and sang it in LA, and then and then we got it back. And I remember the first time I listened to it, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and it was, yes, you are right. It was a dream come true. This angel who I've admired my whole life. I'd written a song and she was on it.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to it. Let's see if it brings back any new memories.
There's no reason for you to lose your mind, 'cause I've seen something that's gonna change our time. If I could, I'd make you understand. If I could, I'd make you understand. There's no hurry, it's gonna come for sure, 'cause I know that someday we're
We will get right back to the interview, but before we do, I want to tell you about a community that I've created over on a site called School. It's a place for us to geek out, for us to get behind the scenes footage of a lot of these interviews and to see the stuff that got left on the cutting room floor that maybe didn't make the full edit, but would be accessible to somebody like you that's part of our community. It's also a place where if you're interested in guitar gear, bass gear, whatever it is that you might be interested in musically, we're going to be talking about it, whether it's signal paths to optimize your pedal board, whether it's special DIY tips and tricks, whether it comes to cable routing, how to make your own cables, pedal board related solutions. All that good stuff is going to be available there for you, in addition to being able to get access to me and the artists that we interview with exclusive Q&As and even live chats that we can do in some cases with some of these artists, where we get to talk with them and even include some of those questions throughout the actual interview itself, so that you can have the closest relationship to everything that's going on here as possible. Head over to our School site, which will be listed in the description and on screen below if you're interested in joining the community. You can do so absolutely free, and there's also benefits for you if you want to start buying any of the services that we offer, which include our pedal board masterclass, which is a pedal board class for beginners that you can check out, in addition to all new courses that we're going to be building and putting up each and every month, getting special discounts on that, getting special discounts on Vertex products, and more. Please do check it out. We'd love to have you. Again, you can join for free and just be a part of the conversation, and you're going to get some great benefits by doing so. Now back to the interview.
Wow. Man.
Yeah, Joni.
Who played bass on that?
I don't know who played bass, but it's my bass line.
Yeah.
I would write a lot of the bass lines, and I have a feeling I'm.
Maybe Tim knows.
Hey Tim, it's definitely my bass line, and I could be playing on it, but it sounds a bit too neat for me, a bit too pro.
The other thing that I noticed is there seems to be like a phaser on a lot of stuff, and then there's also a section where it sounds like there's a univibe.
Possibly. Hey Tim, who played bass on If I Could? Is it me on the? Is it? It's my bass line. Do 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 do. Bong bong. Is that me playing it though?
And then was that Gus on guitar or was that Chris? And it sounds like they had a univibe or a phaser, but it sounds deeper. That's why I think it sounds like there's a univibe on it. And I know Wendy told me that she had used a univibe on a lot of your stuff, but she didn't remember what songs. So I don't know if that was one of them.
Possibly, yeah, it could have been.
Because she said she had a big gray box original Shinai Japanese univibe.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was real nice.
Yeah.
It probably me.
Okay.
Maybe. I would my bass player would make its way to, because I remember that I would play things and they would always sound kind of, and then we tried to get other people to play them and they wouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was through my limitations.
Was that a P bass or what was that?
Whatever would be around, wouldn't it? I guess it would
Music
be
Man.
Probably be a P bass.
Yeah.
Probably one of Trevor's basses, maybe.
Okay.
He had a great beat bass, but yeah. But you know, I listened to that, and I'm listening to. I just one of there are a couple of things that really stand out in it is how low I'm singing.
Yeah.
Right, and that's often quite difficult to sing low. And whole tune in. So, and that's I particularly like the timbre of my voice there. And again, that's Trevor. That's a great producer.
Yeah.
That's someone that says, no, okay, well, try that, do that, and it'll be enough. Trust me, your voice sounds great down there. And you know, because I would never do it with confidence if I was on my own. But he's like, you know, try that, sing it, and so that's one thing that sticks out to me is is I like it from a kind of selfish perspective that I hear an area of my voice that up until that point I hadn't heard.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing I love so much about it is how he sets Joni up.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's such a tiny but so important production thing
Yeah.
where it goes do 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 do, you know, after I finish singing, and it waits an extra bar. But it doesn't come in on the fourth or eighth bar. It comes in on an odd bar, and he just prolongs it like one bar extra, and then you hear her voice. Well, you hear both of us, but you hear it. And so when it really sets you up, it just it kind of leaves you just enough time, and then an event happens, and again that's great production. That's masterful arrangement. You know, that's where you get this, and you know and when that voice does come in, it's so recognizable and so iconic. And so special. And then the dance between us is, you know, the vocal
that
dance,
kind of call and response thing that's happening.
It's just again, and you know, look, and I didn't sing it like that. That's what you're listening to is a vocal comp. So that's Trevor and Tim taking the best parts of what I've done and doing and making a comp and then showing me the picture. And so, you know, quite often the way that you hear things on a record is not necessarily the way that they were sang. You know, and you're hearing the way that they were comped. And I mean, you sang them, of course, that way, but then it, you know, it's one of the great skills of the team that I had is that, you know, you weren't just working with a great producer and a great engineer, you were working with great arrangers. And arrangement is a forgotten art form in modern music. It is a forgotten art form.
Well, I'm so grateful to you, Seal, for Seal 2. Again, for me, it's a top 10 record for me personally.
Oh, thank you. Well,
that I still come back to it, you know,
That
every
means a lot
year,
to
and
me.
it's very important just for me in terms of, you know, my upbringing
personal journey.
and it was just such a great, like, to me, there's every single song on there is really perfection.
you.
So thank you for that contribution, and in just musically, I think you've inspired a lot of people through that work.
Thank you, brother. Well, you know, one of the things that I hear, that I'm fortunate to hear from fans is, you know, whenever it is, you know, when we're touring, you know, and I meet someone who's kind of around my age group or younger than me, and they would say things, they would always say this thing to me, you know, I grew up to your music, right? And it's always such a nice thing that when people say that, because my response is generally, so did I, you know, because I was growing up too. I was, all you're hearing with these records is chapters of my life. It's like a musical diary, and the only difference between myself and the other person on the street is that I'm singing about them as opposed to just writing them down. And they've somehow, in some weird chain of events, ended up on a thing called a record. But it is really me growing up, just like the people I was singing for. I was also figuring it out myself, and I was just trying to find my way through it all. And so when, you know, when someone like you says something like, well, it's in my top 10, there is no greater thing that you could say to me, you know, or if you say that, you know, it formed the soundtrack, I guess I'm paraphrasing you obviously, but if you're saying that it was part of the soundtrack to beautiful parts of your life, you know, the good and the sad, you know, to me, that it's everything. That is the reason I became a recording artist. That is the reason right there. It's, you know, all of the other stuff was gravy and icing, but the reason I became a recording artist is is to provide people with the ability to find themselves or piece of themselves in my music.
Yeah. Well, I want to transition from Seal 2 to Human Beings.
Oh,
And before we get into Human Being, I want to talk about, you did a soundtrack song for the movie Space Jam that was a cover of the Steve Miller Band song Fly Like an Eagle. And I'm curious how that worked, because that was actually a pretty big hit, and even though it was a cover, that absolutely like dominated. I think obviously that R. Kelly song was huge on that record, but I think that was still like a number 4 or something like that on Billboards. So I was curious how you got involved, or did you propose that cover, or did they ask you to do that cover? Like, how did it work that you came to be on the Space Jam soundtrack with Fly Like an Eagle?
This guy called Dominic Trenier, who sadly passed away, he somehow, I don't know, like he got asked to produce or come up with the soundtrack, a song for Space Jam, and he asked me to do it. He asked me to do it, and it was his idea to do Fly Like an Eagle. And sure, and I guess he kind of sold the idea to the record company that he could get me to do it.
Yeah.
And the greatest compliment I got was from Steve Miller himself.
Oh yeah, what did he say?
He said, I love your cover of my song. You made it yours.
Yeah.
And that's about as good as it got.
Yeah.
For me, but like for the kind of R&B, D'Angelo's on that record. The R&B that's not my doing. That's Dominic's and his idea of him putting it together, and that was all he could take full credit for that.
And there's one thing on that song that I think is really unique, and I'm going to play it for you in a second, but there is a nod to Crazy that you implanted into Fly Like an Eagle. Can you tell me about that sort of artistic decision? And I mentioned to you before we talk, like, people must have noticed that and asked you that before this, but you said that hadn't been something that anybody had brought up to you before.
No one had brought it up to me before, and I can't remember exactly why I did it, but again, it's I guess it just felt right, and again, I had been accustomed to the musical freedom that was afforded to me by Trevor and the team. And so you got to understand that if you can manage, this is the reason why you have to stay, if you are an aspiring artist and you are trying to make it through, this is why you can't sell out. This is why you really have to, depending on what you want. If you want a lifelong career in music and all of the wonderful things that you've heard about that it gives you, you have to be authentic, and you have to be not authentic to other people, but you have to find your own authenticity as an artist. You have to explore that. And this is why it's important to do that, because if you can manage to transcend whatever potentially would hold you back through not conforming, if you can somehow break through with that attitude, with that philosophy, then what awaits you on the other side is endless possibilities, and and you carry that same freedom. You know, you are known for that. Like for example, today I feel that as a singer, I can pretty much do anything that I want to do. If I wanted to bring out a Celtic music album, I could do that. If I wanted, I couldn't probably do a rap album. I'd be shit at that. But if I wanted to sing like a jazz standards album or a classical album, if I wanted to do classical, I could do it, because the reason being is because I refused to be pigeonholed.
Yeah.
I refused to be categorized. I refused to. I never thought of myself as a rock singer or an R&B singer or a reggae singer or a or a classical singer. I just thought of myself as a singer.
Yeah.
Who loves music, and therefore from an artistic perspective, the reason I continue doing music is on the off chance that I may wake up tomorrow and either A, write a great song to sing, or B, come across one to sing. I don't particularly care.
Yeah.
To me, it's always been the same. It's always been about the song. The song is paramount. It's the song and the voice, and really, at the top of it, it's the song. It's like I live for the song. We on the way over here again in the car, we were listening to "Could It Be Magic" by Barry Manilow, you know. And it is a magical piece of music. It's breathtaking. It makes me tear up when I hear it. And it's the song. The song is magic.
Yeah.
You know, it was magical then, and it's still magical.
Yeah.
And that's the power of a great song. It can change people's lives. You know, the song is really why you and I are here today.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about my song. I'm talking about the song that made you heard as young Mason,
Yeah.
a kid, you heard a song that made you say, oh, that's what I want to do. That's it. Guitar, great. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
I don't know what that song was. For me, it was a song, that song, I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I heard that song and I go, oh God, I found myself in it. That was a song that was the first song I sung live publicly.
Yeah.
You know, I heard, and that it was the song. The song is paramount. The song is it. It is about the song.
Yeah.
You have your version of that, a song, and that's what made you choose this life in music.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why we're here today. And so, you know, it's that attitude. And you talk about a song like Space Jam. And then at the end of it, I'm singing, in a world full of people. At the end, well, that's because it suits the song.
Yeah.
And I don't question why. I just go, oh, that works.
Yeah.
Okay, it's part of another song. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's musical.
But it was perfect. It was kind of like you had the secondary melody that was kind of interacting with the...
I think a lot of that is also kind of, you know, always said, you know, who's really good at that and who's a great teacher of that is Foster.
David Foster.
Yeah, he's really good at things like that. He calls them events. He says that when he makes music or when he is writing music or arranging music, he thinks events. He tries to create moments where people go, oh.
Well, just think of After the Love Is Gone. How many events are in that? Because that's one that he was involved with.
Some magic. Yeah, but he tries to create those moments, where the audience goes, or the listener goes,
Yeah.
He tries to create as many of those.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess that's the attitude with, you know, that I try, even till this day when I'm making music or making a record, I try and put those bits, like, I try and think of myself as a listener. What do I want to hear?
Yeah.
You know, oh, something, okay, there's a weak spot there. No, something needs to happen. An event needs to happen there. Something needs to happen that makes me go, that keeps me still listening.
Yeah. Let's have a little listen to it if you don't mind.
Okay, absolutely.
I've just consolidated to kind of just that section, so you'll hear,
Mhm.
your original
Okay.
Crazy, and then it'll transition immediately into that same section in the Steve Miller cover.
In a sky full of people, only some want to fly. Isn't that crazy? In a sky full of people, only some want to fly. Isn't that crazy?
God, that Space Jam track slams.
Yeah, it's got. Did you play bass on that one too, or was that keyboard bass?
It's keyboard bass, but I think it sounds like one of my bass lines. So it's probably something I sang to. Do you know what? I think I actually played on it.
Yeah,
I think I did play on it. Yeah, I think I did actually.
Yeah.
And if you know what, if the bass line has no more than 2 notes, right? The chances are I played it because that's the extent of my ability. If it had no more than 2 notes, then I probably played it.
Who played wah wah on?
Definitely not me.
But on Crazy, because that wah wah is like super throaty, and
that would be Wendy.
You think Wendy?
That's probably Wendy.
Yeah,
probably.
I should ask her what. I should ask her what wah she used.
Probably Wendy.
Wow. Well, they're just both such great songs. But I want to move to Human Being, and gosh, what an incredible record that is. I remember. I mean, I'm going off of just memory here, because I think that my parents got it for me for Christmas. So I'm wondering that it came out like in the fall or in the winter. It was like maybe 98 or something like that. I don't know if you have any sense of when it was released, but I think it must have been in the winter or fall, because I remember getting it. I remember you had the silhouette of you on the cover, and you kind of had like a greenish background, and I just remember, like listening to the first song, Human Beings, and hearing that intro guitar part, and then the acoustic guitar is also on there, and man, it's just like, again, on that album, I wore that thing out on. I had one of those no skip, CD
CDs,
players, and
I remember those things. The great rock and roll swindle.
And wraparound ear headphones, and just burning that thing up, just listening to it a ton. But one of my favorite songs on it is the song Color.
Oh, Color.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you already knew where I was going.
Well, no, that still remains.
That still remains. Yeah. So Color, I think, is incredible. And actually, I think when Brian introduced us, it was because I was asking a question about Color and who played the wah wah parts, because there's these really cool wah pads that are in there, and then just like rhythm wah wah.
Probably Chris Bruce. Because Gus played electric on it, but I think the wah wah would probably be Chris.
Okay.
Like they both of them are all over that album, and it's particularly like Jamie, Chris, like that the band of brothers, like we're all.
And Wendy and Lisa were also on that one.
On Human Beings, I don't know if they are on it, but not. I think so. Tim would know. I don't think so much. I don't think they're on it as
much as Seal 1 and 2.
No,
okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But Chris, Jamie, Greg Ergain. Remember him? You remember the late Greg Ergain? He's on it. Yeah. And it's it's an interesting, like the toughest record to make, Human Being.
Yeah.
Um,
Where did you record it?
We started it in Whistler, in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, we rented a house up there, like, my second home. I love it up there. And, but it was a tough record to make. It was not, it was, it was and also I think it was an interesting transition period for me. I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to push, and almost kind of, it was the antidote to Seal 2 with Kiss from a Rose on it. And Kiss from a Rose had just got, I don't know till this day why artists do that. You have like huge commercial success and you become a household name and into people's homes, and then you go and sabotage it. You try your best to kind of not to sabotage it, but you try your best to do something which is the opposite of that. And I think Human Beings was a reaction to like, if you look at the artwork just in and of itself, you look at the artwork of Seal 2, and it's black and white and very stark and kind of and beautiful in some ways, but it's monochromatic but very kind of iconic, and then Human Beings is like about as dark as it gets. I look positively reptilian on the cover, but like I wanted to somehow highlight the dark side of our personalities, and that I kind of I saw Seal, even though I kind of rebelled a little bit against Seal 2. In retrospect, I now know that I saw Seal 2 and Human Beings as they're very connected, because they're the yin and yang, they're the light and the dark side of it. Because it was quite introspective, Human Beings, and even in its tone and its sound, it's a very dark sounding record, but a beautiful darkness. I think maybe if I really thought about it, I probably one of my favorite bands of all time, and a band that definitely had an impact on me, influence, it was Alice in Chains. Out of that whole kind of Seattle scene, that whole grunge scene that was huge for a while, whether Pearl Jam, Nirvana, STP, all of those. To me, man, it was all about Alice in Chains.
Yeah.
Man. They were the band for me. They had something that the others didn't.
Yeah.
And man, the vocals of Jerry and Lane together. Yeah. Oh, come on now. To me, that was a very unique sound. That was like a very dark beauty, but beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think some of that found its way. Believe it or not, it may not sound it, because it's Human Beings is definitely not a rock album, with the exception of like Human Beings, a title track. But I think a lot of that found its way onto that record. That the influence, not necessarily the sound, but that understanding of being able to create a dark beauty. And so that was where the cover came from. I was very specific with Mondino as to what I wanted for the cover. We shot that in just outside Paris, and then he did things to it, and he manipulated it afterwards, where he made my fingers a little bit longer, and he kind of altered the jawline of my, and I was in that kind of position, and it was to kind of it was meant to embrace as opposed to run away from, but to confront and embrace the dark side of the
Yeah.
personality, which was not to do any dark things, but
Right.
to understand that denial is not the key to well-being. Acknowledgement of the I guess that's a very kind of Taoist approach to life. You know, I was trying to kind of embrace, understand that one cannot exist without the other, and harmony is achieved and when there is balance.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you become dark or you start doing dark things. In fact, it means the complete opposite. But it means that, you know, if you look at like the yin yang symbol, right? You have like one half is light, the other half is dark. But within that light there is darkness, and within that darkness there is light. And it is saying a few things. It's saying that within light there is always the potential for dark, and vice versa. And true harmony and the ability to walk the path of righteousness comes when there is balance. There has to be balance. And I think that human beings, both musically and in terms of its art direction, was my attempt to somehow address the dark side and the weakness and the ugly side of my personality.
Well, let's listen to Color, and let's hear a little bit of this.
Color fades away with the light.
So good, man. Yeah, I love the wah wah stuff on that. I feel like it's like one of the more. And whenever I pick up a wah wah, I feel like I'm like try to be like Slash or something like that, and it's always distasteful. But this is
You know, I listen to, and I just feel like so proud to kind of you know, I said that Human Beings was like a tough record
Yeah.
to make. It really was a tough record to make for a lot of reasons, but I just, it's so unapologetic that like it just is what it is, you know, and you know, everything from my approach to it to the musicians, like the people that I've been fortunate enough to work with, Jamie, Gus, Chris, Bruce, that's us.
yeah,
That's us. The gloves are off. We're completely unadulterated.
Yeah.
It is just, it's like Trevor's like, okay, I'm not trying to make, you know, when I'm not trying to make like a top 40 record.
yeah,
This is what it is, or what it's going to be. And you know, the funny thing is that in France they love that record.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was promoting Seal 4, I think it was, you know, and the journalist says, "Oh, Cecile, you know, so Seal 4 is a big departure from Human Beings," right? And he goes, "I know, Human Beings." I said, "You know that record, you know, because I was under the impression only 10 people bought it, right? And one of them was me,
and the
right?
other one was me, I guess.
And he said something, oh, but of course it's your best album,
Yeah.
you know. And I felt like, oh, geez, like where were you when we released it, because it wasn't commercially successful. But I don't know if it's the one I'm most proud of. But if I were to go back and listen, that's probably the one that I secretly have the most satisfaction
Yeah.
with, and it's because of like songs like Color.
Yeah.
You know, I still think it could be, you know, the album could be improved. You know, I think I could have done better on it, but when I listen to us, I mean, Chris Bruce is, Gus too, but Chris Bruce is playing on that. He's playing bass and guitar. I think Gus is playing that da 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 da. Those things. That's Gus. But boo boo doo 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 doo, and that's Chris playing bass. He's actually a bass player first, so the guitar was second.
Wow.
But he's number. But you know, and him playing the wah wah stuff. That's Chris.
Okay.
And him playing the bass, and then Jamie at the end, just like that is unbridled. Jamie just like digging in.
Also, Jamie's like road sound on that whole album is like really insanely good.
It is like I you know, and I love like, and it's in 6, you know, so it's kind of, I love time signatures like that because they give me the freedom to kind of to float.
Yeah.
Whenever we do you know, songs in an odd time signature, like that's, I feel most comfortable there because I can float and not be held down by 4/4 or even 3/4.
Yeah.
I can just fall and then find myself on the odd one where I need to, and then go off again.
I love that. Well, I have one more song from Human Being that to talk about, which is latest Craze.
Warmth, security, and all that comes with it. Still, you're wondering how it ever felt this good when you do it by daylight, in company, or even by yourself. If they tell you it gets the night when you do it in daylight, or even sometimes in company. That's okay. But if it felt the same, a little superficial, I figure if it's new to me, it's the latest craze. The latest craze. Tell me, Father, say that it's no good. I'm doing something. Frankly, I don't think that I should. Any fool can see there's no guarantee. No. If they tell you it's harder, then something's right. But trust me, if you're feeling it, it gets easier by the night when you do it in daylight, or even sometimes in company. That's okay. But if it felt the same, a little superficial, I figure if it's new to me, then it's the latest craze. But if it felt the same, yet slightly superficial, I figure it's all new to me. It's just the latest craze. Just the latest craze. What does this mean to me? Any fool can see. It's just a fantasy. Not a phase. It's just the latest craze. It's the latest craze. It's the latest craze. Any fool can see I'm doing something. Frankly, I don't think that I should.
Well, I enjoyed that.
And then right after it'd be
The reprise, is that the reprise? that comes in?
no, it's yesterday hit me.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Again, it's a funny one that because that I mentioned before that the like it was kind of like the dark side of
Yeah.
my life at the time, and I remember that latest because that was just coming to terms with stardom and the glitz and the kind of the shallow aspect of it all, and how it was fun, but it was be careful of what you want, you might get it. It was fun, but it was not necessarily all that you thought it would be.
Yeah.
And so the latest craze, and it's cool though. I really I can just hear those guys all over. Jamie, that's a lot of Jamie.
Yeah.
That's really I'm listening to it now and it sounds fresh.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole, like, the arrangements, the production, it's
It's
I really love it. I
unapologetic.
love it. I
It's
love it.
not. It's kind of. It's if you're left to your own devices. Yeah, I'm really proud of that record.
Yeah.
Like, particularly now, songs that I just couldn't listen to. I listened to them now in the cold light of day, and they kind of like, okay, it's a concept album.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm again just so appreciative for, everything that you've done, and
Oh,
I
thank you,
can't
brother.
emphasize enough how much of an effect it's had on, my musical taste and
Oh,
sensibilities.
thank you, brother.
I would like to end the interview today by showing you a few short videos and listening to a few clips of some things that you've done over your career, and maybe explaining some of the context or a story behind it. The first of which is you getting to jam with Jeff Beck and perform Manic Depression by Jimi
Oh, that
Hendrix.
was awesome. Well, Jeff Beck is my favorite guitarist of all time.
Yeah.
Well, him and Prince, actually. But yeah, there's Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck is without a doubt the most lyrical guitarist I can think of. It's just beautiful what comes out of his and him as a person too, but what comes out of his those hands, is just it's so pure. It's so pure and so and I've always said that if Beck could sing, he would have been the greatest, gone down as one of the greatest, performers or recording artist. Well, he is a great recording artist, but he would have been massive global if he could sing it, because he wrote so beautifully and he played so lyrically, and that was just his way of singing, so and he just made me feel so comfortable for someone who's relatively new to this, and
What year was that? Do you remember?
I can't remember.
Was that in the 90s, I presume? Had Seal 2 come out already at that point?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
probably mid 90s then?
Yeah, I would say mid 90s. Yeah, mid 90s. But he was just, he was so humble, and he made you feel so great, and I was just in awe of him. I thought he was incredible. And I remember when we did Manic Depression, he was just so open to any direction that we wanted to take it. So he was so much fun.
Was he the one that pitched the idea to you, or did you seek him out and pitch him the idea?
I think he pitched the idea to me.
Uh-huh.
He wanted to, he asked me, and we'd worked together before, obviously. So he
Obviously,
just
yeah.
said, when someone like that calls, and have always been, and still am of the mindset that, the greatest part of all of this or one of the greatest parts of all of this for me, as you can probably guess, is collaboration. I love the collaborative process of making a record. Because what it does is that you're capturing everyone's DNA, you're capturing the time, it's a sign of the times, you're capturing the moment. It's like you're taking a snapshot, a chapter of everyone's life and how they see the world and how the world affects them at that moment. And you're making this thing called a record. And that only really happens for me with the collaborative aspect. If I couldn't have that, if I couldn't collaborate, I probably wouldn't. I probably would have picked something else where I could. And so, when somebody, asks, whether it's Joni, Jeff Beck, or whoever, whether it's an unknown artist, if they want to collaborate with me, and if the music's good, I'm open to it, because that's when the unexpected happens. That's when the magic happens. Music is just like, the catalyst for something of, if not greater, but of equal greatness. And that's just what happens when souls, when they meet and they come together and they create something. Magic happens, and we just hear kind of a musical manifestation of it, but it's more than that. It's the essence of who we are. So I love the collaborative aspect. And so, if someone like Beck asked me, look, to do something, I just, especially when it's somebody like Beck, I don't really question. It's, if, they say jump, I say how high and when. Well, you do, don't you? You just do it. Because it's not about you're doing something for them. It's like you're being given an opportunity to make something magical happen. To find out something about yourself. And so my memories of Jeff Beck, God rest his soul, just one of great fortune and just and great fondness, and the fact that I got to work with him is like it's like working with Joni. You're and somebody who is like a very special soul, a very special messenger. So that was great.
Let's maybe we'll listen to a minute of it just to refresh our memories. Just if we could.
Manic depression is touching my soul. I know what I want, but I just don't know how to go back in. Feeling sweet feeling drops from my fingers. Manic depression has captured my soul. Woman so willing, the sweet cause in vain, vain. You make love, you break love, and it all seems the same when it's over. Oh, music, sweet music, I wish I could caress all my tenderness. Now manic depression's a frustrated mess.
Oh man,
Yep, Jeff Beck.
was Vinnie Colaiuta playing drums on that?
No,
Yeah.
I don't think it was Vinny playing on that. I'm not sure. I don't think it was Vinny. It doesn't sound like him.
It was a great performance. I don't think there's a video of it. I've just seen just the audio. But it was for a.
See what I mean about him being so lyrical, though?
Oh,
It's just like it's just manically depressed. His
Yeah.
guitar is the whole narrative is just like it's all over the place. It's like I don't know what I am. It's like,
He's a genius, man. He was a genius. Well, another thing I wanted to talk to you about is some of your later work after Seal 1, Seal 2, and Human Beings was your work with the great David Foster. I have a little photo here. Not that you don't remember who he is, but more for the purposes of people watching who may not know who David Foster is. But you've done some work with him. He's, I think, considered to be one of the best at what he does. What is it like working on a record with David Foster?
quick, because he's really fast. Like he does not waste time. He arranges and records in real time at the same time. Like
And he's running Pro Tools.
He has someone running Cubase, I think it is, but
Cubase.
I know.
Sony, isn't that?
I think it's Cubase. I think that's what he uses.
Wow.
Yeah, or was at the time. He plays, and like you just got to be ready to press record.
Yeah,
because he's fast.
Wow.
And he's more kind of like sing the vocal and beat it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but therein, like, it's a different kind of genius, and so it's a real a real privilege to be able to work with someone like him, and that's it's one of the reasons why I love it so much, and is that I have opportunities to work with people like him, whether it's Trevor, whether it's David Foster, or the just countless great musicians that I've had the pleasure and the privilege of of being with. Yeah. And I guess, when I was aspiring, I always did see myself being in having a life in music, but did I see myself being having the opportunity, and that the whether it's Bowie, Joni Mitchell, David Foster, Trevor Horn, and the great musicians I worked with. Did I see that coming? No, I never saw that. I never imagined any of that. I never imagined any of that. And that has been right up there with the best parts of it all.
Yeah.
That's everything to me. And I'll always have those memories.
Yeah.
And those experiences. Yeah, they're incredible.
Well, I want to ask you about one last thing before we complete, which is the tour that you did for Human Beings. And you had just about the most all-star band that anybody could have. You had Michael Landau, you had David Sancious, you had
Earl on drums.
and Brian Blade, and you had also Tony Levin. And so you had people from all different just like studio legends, touring legends, and just like the very best of what they do. How did you come to assemble a band with that much firepower? Like, what was the...
I asked them. I asked them, and they said yes. I just asked them, and they said, sure, I'll do it. And again, that comes with the territory, doesn't it? Well, I say it comes with the territory, does it? I don't know, is the answer to that question. I don't know how I was able to get those people, but I will say, look, it's at the end of the day, it really is not so much having that much firepower. They were great musicians, and they are great musicians, and it was a privilege to play with them. But it's really, it's the luck of the draw when you are able to assemble a group of musicians, whether they have names or whether they're big names or not so big names. When you assemble a group of musicians, and it is really the luck of the draw. If you're lucky enough to get that chemistry, magic happens, and it doesn't really matter their status or where they come from.
Yeah.
You could have the greatest musicians in the world, and you could not have that magic. You could not have that chemistry. But you somehow, and that's why, as much as I have been impressed and attracted to great players, I'm more attracted to just people that inspire me. And it's not necessarily always to do with their playing. It's just to do with a lot of the time it's their personality. And that's the thing that that excites me the most, is because you see, then you create the potential for magic, for greatness. When you have, obviously, people that can play, but you have, my brother has an expression which I love using. He says, that person or that piece of music, it doesn't quite curl all the way around. It's something that is like, it does something in a way that you don't quite expect it to. Those are the musicians that I really like.
Yeah.
The ones that that just do something that I haven't heard before, or do something in a way. And again, it's not always their playing. It comes out in their playing, but it's really more about their personality and the oddness and it doesn't quite curl all the way that they look at the world, or and sometimes it's not just musicians that you get on with, it's musicians that you have a thing, like for example Chris, right? Chris is one of those people, right? He is a brilliant musician. He's one of the greatest musicians I have ever had the good fortune of playing with. But man, we just used to have this thing with our personalities, or at least I felt it, which is where kind of I never really felt totally comfortable. And it may not have been anything to do with him. It could have been to do with me, but that's my point. No one knows. But what happened is we made great music together, and we are great friends, and I love him dearly, right? But it took a while, and it's actually in the kind of later years. So maybe there was a part of my personality thought was an asshole. Who knows? But you never know. But the point I'm trying to illustrate is that that's the wonder and the magic of what I'm talking about. It's not straightforward. It's not get brilliant musicians and then brilliant music happens. That's not what happens. That can happen, right? But that's not what happens. It is really about this very delicate and careful alchemy. That's what it's like, and you can't predict it, and if you are fortunately enough, sometimes it just happens, and then when it does, and when it does, it's just the most beautiful thing in the world.
Well, I'd like to show you a little 1-minute clip of the band performing Human Being.
That's Earl. I don't even know where that's from.
And Landau's going crazy with his Univibe and Geistron amp.
Listen to Earl, man.
Yeah.
Just whipping people into a frenzy.
Yeah. Well, Seal, I'm just so grateful that you agreed to come here today, and I'm just so grateful to you for everything, man. Oh man,
brother, thank you, man.
Yeah.
What a pleasure.
You've had such a tremendous impact on not just me, but on the world, and I just can't thank you enough for everything you've done and continue to do.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
And a lot of fun. It's been a trip down memory lane, and an opportunity to kind of listen to some of those songs in a very objective light, through your ears. And
I'm your biggest cheerleader, believe me.
Can I stand when you turn out the light that shines over me? That shines over me. Tell me how if you take all the gift that you give to me, we burn If you take all the light from out of me, right from under me, tell me how will I live if you take all the gift that you give to me. We burn so brightly, we love so fast, yet still we remain. And we'll give today. Oh, yeah, yeah. Don't you know? You know, you know, you know, I know, you know. And I said,